We're back for another week of pop politics.
Yay!
So there's very little pop this week, but that just means that we'll get to all of the craziness that is in the world right now a little bit sooner. So buckle up. Take it away.
Yes, there isn't a lot of pop culture this week, but they announced that the Hogwarts people, not the Hogwarts people, the Harry Potter people, J.K. Rowling and Co. and Warner Brothers are releasing a new Harry Potter game. It's called Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery. And it actually sounds kind of cool. Like, I'm not really a big, game on my phone kind of person.
Yeah.
But this one sounds kind of cool. It's like you're a Hogwarts student and you, go through and you can, do all the lessons and you learn spells and you have duels. And it's, set in the 80s when, Tonks was there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's Tonks is in there. And I think Bill Weasley is there. So there's a few familiar faces. Oh, he would
have been there that early. That makes sense.
Does that sound right? Okay.
Yeah, because Harry Potter itself takes place in the 90s.
In the 90s.
And Ron's, 5 years younger. So yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, good. And you can, go through, all 7 years. It sounds pretty cool. But what I think is even cooler they announced this week is, a lot of the cast from the movie are, lending their voices. So Maggie Smith is voicing Professor McGonagall, which is cool. Michael Gambon is doing Dumbledore. And Warwick Davis is doing Flitwick. So, it'll just feel so much like you're in the movies, you're at Hogwarts with the voices. So I applaud those actors for, going back and doing that, because that's so cool. Also, the Madame Pomfrey and Madame Hooch their voices are also on there. So, wouldn't that be just so cool to, go there and, hear Maggie Smith's voice? She is McGonagall. When you hear her speak, you're like, woo!
Yeah.
So, good for them. I think that's exciting.
That is exciting. Okay. Next, moving on to the CW shows, which we've talked about quite a lot.
Yes. Supergirl, Flash, Arrow, all those have all been renewed for another season.
That's great.
So this will be Arrow's 7th season.
Oh, for real? I didn't realize it.
Yeah, Arrow has been going since, I think, 2012. Yeah, since 2012.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And was the starting of all of this. The CW is superheroes. And it spawned now Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, and Black Lightning. And they've all been renewed for another season.
That's great.
And it'll be interesting to see how much longer they go with Arrow. I mean, all the other shows are a little bit they're not as far along. Flash is only in season 4.
Yeah, and so they have storylines that they can still do.
Right. But Arrow's kind of, I mean, if you follow the show, they've, completed all the the flashbacks, because it's been 5 years.
Right, so
this season, I'm currently watching it, and there are no flashbacks. So it's kind of interesting. They've really, departed from the structure of the show as they started out with. So it'll be interesting to see, how much longer they go with Arrow and how it all fits. But, I mean, it's a really great show, and I like it. So... Right. But I was happy to see that because I watch a lot of those shows. So, good for them. Last thing in pop culture, like I said, we didn't have a ton. But the last thing is, I talked about a while back how Disney was going to start, doing their own streaming services.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the first of those is coming out. It's for ESPN. So, it's a sports streaming service. It's going to be called ESPN Plus. And it's launching April 12th. For a price of $4.99 a month.
I was gonna say they're never gonna make that cash.
$49.99 would be way too much.
Wait, Netflix Plus.
ESPN Plus. So it's like a Netflix for sports. It's a sports platform streaming service.
Interesting. That's
so
there's Spotify, student Spotify.
Yeah,
that's the price of student Spotify.
That's pretty cheap.
Premium.
So, and I've heard a lot that ESPN has been struggling lately. So I bet they're hoping that this will rejuvenate and kind of kickstart again the company and their base and their revenue. They're supposed to have live games and a lot of coverage and blah blah blah. I'm not super into sports, so I didn't super read into it. But it's interesting that we're getting more and more of these platforms, and You know, a few years ago, it was just Netflix was, like, the only streaming platform.
Right.
Now there's Amazon Prime,
And
there's Hulu, CBS has their own thing, HBO has their thing. Now Disney's getting in the game with ESPN Plus, and we've also know that Disney's going to do, like, their own for, like, Disney content. So it'll be interesting to see, like, how the entertainment industry, how far they go on the streaming kick. Like, if they double down and go all in, or if just, like, some people will do a streaming service.
So, speaking of Spotify, just really quickly, though, Spotify went public this week. Started selling its stocks on the market, but it did it without the help of an investment firm.
Yeah, it was, like, very little fanfare.
Yeah, and they just put it on the market, and basically it is now the most lucrative music streaming service in the world, because it just kind of took off and gangbusters because it was, like, employees started selling some of their stocks. So yeah, so they had, like, banks to manage it and kind of guide them through, but they didn't hire an investment firm to, like, set the price of stock. So the stock prices fluctuated and were based on demand and that kind of thing. So that's kind of cool.
But isn't it worth, like, $3 billion or something?
30 billion.
30 billion. Wow, I was off. So
just by a zero.
Yeah. Which, I mean, when you're in the billions, that's a big difference.
You're right.
But kudos to Spotify.
Yeah,
like, good for them.
Especially, like, to go without an investment firm. Like, that's a big win. It'll be interesting to see what other kind of companies do it that way.
Do you have the numbers there for, like, how many subscribers they have? I saw that in one article, and it was, like, a very, very large number. Like, way more. I mean, their biggest competitor is, like, Apple Music, which isn't.
That's a limited.
Which is, like, way far back. Amazon Prime also, or Amazon also has a music platform, but it's not super well used. I don't know. If you can't find the figures, it's fine, but it's...
The Forbes article doesn't have them.
Oh, really, Forbes? Come on.
Let's see
Come on, Forbes.
It doesn't have the number of subscribers. It has all the other numbers.
Oh. But, you know, Spotify, like, a few years ago was just, like, this tiny, like... It's a Swedish company. It's based out of Sweden. And there was a little snafu at the New York Stock Exchange because they put out a Switzerland flag instead of a Swedish flag when they first on the day, and so they kind of freaked out and were like, oh my gosh, but then they fixed it and got a Swedish flag up there.
That's good.
But I mean, that and IKEA are, you know, Sweden's just, those are, you know, the most
here it is,
profitable companies for Sweden. Okay, tell us.
So at the end of 2017, it had 71 million paying customers.
Ooh,
so this doesn't.
That's big.
This is Spotify premium customers.
Oh
this
my gosh.
Isn't like people who just use the product version. In the odds. Yeah.
71 million premium,
which is roughly twice the number of its nearest rival, Apple Music, and then expects its audience to grow to as much as 96 million by the end of the year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's huge. And you know that the paying customers is probably a smaller fraction of the larger whole. Like, that's a huge number of people.
There's probably a ton more people who listen to it on the ad-supported tier.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, good for them.
Yeah.
I knew it was a large number, so...
That's a lot of people.
That's exciting.
Okay, so let's move on to the politics section. So the first thing that we have on this section is that on... oh shoot, I can't remember what day it was now. I've lost track of all the days.
It was
Tuesday. So Tuesday, which was April 3rd, there was a shooting at YouTube headquarters in California, and it was a woman, which is highly unlikely when it comes to mass shootings. But she shot 3 people. They're all there's only one left in critical or in the hospital right now. None of them died, but she died of a self-inflicted gun wound. Her name was Nasim Najafi Agdam, and she should be known that she knew Persian and Turkish, and that she had 4 YouTube channels that she earned a lot of money from because of the ads that were playing on her channels. My worry is with this one is that people will start to think that this shooting was fundamentally inspired by Islam, but it actually was inspired because of she was upset about some policy updates that YouTube had put in place that were restricting some of her ad content and her ad revenue. So she was upset with YouTube. That was why she carried out this mass shooting, And her family had actually called the police and warned them about her prior to the shooting. And she kind of had accused YouTube of restricting her videos and doing a whole bunch of things like that. And really, that's what it, like, they kind of, she blamed them for filtering her videos so they didn't get views. So really, this was inspired by, it was really workplace violence in some ways, that she was inspired by the lack of revenue and the decrease in revenue she was seeing. And mostly she was just really an upset person. But it's really interesting just because, like, she is a female mass shooter, and, like, it's not sexist. It's like looking at the stats to say that there are far more male shooters than there are female. It is very rare to have a female mass shooter. So anything you want to add?
No.
Okay, moving on. Trump has been having
Trump, he's been having, what should I say? He's kind of been going back and forth and gone, like, super crazy on immigration all of a sudden. And nobody really knows why. There are some rumors that he, like, saw a Fox News story, and that's kind of what spurred him on, which wouldn't be surprising, but earlier this week he tweeted, like, no DACA deal. Which, by the way, Trump ended the DACA deal, or the DACA program, like, he put a hard deadline on it, and now it's kind of in this weird limbo stage, which is interesting because Trump has said on multiple occasions that he really feels for the DACA kids, and that he wants to help them out, and of course he blames the Democrats, and says that that it's the Democrats' fault. So nobody really knows, like, what the status of the DACA program is right now, which is really too bad because, I mean, it was, a big part of the, like, shutdown. Was it last month or the month before? I can't remember. But, like, it's been a big bargaining chip, and supposedly a lot of members of Congress think it's important. But, like, nothing's really gone with DACA. So it's kind of interesting. And speaking about immigration, Trump is now sending members of the National Guard to the border to help fortify and secure the border. There is, like, this big caravan of immigrants, like, roaming through Mexico on their way to the U.S. border, and they're, like, all from, like, Central American countries, like Honduras and Nicaragua and El Salvador, like, those countries. And Fox News ran a story on it, and then Trump started talking about it, so that's probably where he got it. But he's kind of, like, all of a sudden done this huge, big push for, like, border security and immigration. So now he's calling on the National Guard to go down to help the border. He originally stated that he want members of the military, but I found this out recently. Actually, the U.S. military has, like, a lot of restrictions what it can do on U.S. soil. It's like members of the military can't, like, arrest people or be like law enforcement. The military is, like, overseas actions. So now Trump is using the National Guard, which is technically under the control of governors of the states.
Right.
So it's like this weird, like, power structure, like, command structure. As far as I understand it, the governors of the states have to agree to use their members of the National Guard.
Right. I mean, this has been done in the past. Like, this isn't isolated to Trump. Like, both Obama and Bush have done this. But they did it in extreme, like, when immigration was getting out of hand and they really did need the backup. Trump is doing it in a point in time when immigration numbers have slowed down a lot, and where we're not really seeing a greater impact, a greater threat from the Mexican border. And so it's just a really interesting choice, and it'll be interesting to see if the governors agree to send the National Guard, because it is, like, National Guard is specifically set up to be under the states, right?
So, and from what I've heard, like, the National Guard will just be doing, like, a supportive role. Like, they won't be, like, actually, like, detaining people and
Yeah,
that
they
stuff.
can't.
They'll be doing, like, surveillance and, like, supportive
Yeah,
roles.
they'll be doing things like documenting people that are detained,
And,
but
like,
they can't
helping with
actually do the
surveillance.
detaining. Yeah.
So, kind of interesting at this point in time.
Yep. Okay, moving on from all of that. So there's been some things going on with Syria. So obviously Syria has been in a civil war for many years now. I actually can't remember when that started because it's been so long.
I think it was like 2012.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And before that they were in civil war, but it's really like blossomed into this huge collapsing deal in the sense like 2012. So Trump talked about this week eventually leaving Syria. He said not yet, but like we eventually want to get out because ISIS is all but vanquished and we've done our job and we're victorious and blah blah and we need to get out. Okay, so that's like background on that. But the problem is that I mean Trump campaigned against this too, like pulling out of hot zones, because if you give your enemy a deadline, then obviously they're just going to wait you out and they're going to pick up right where they left off. So if you say we're going to get out in like 3 months or whatever, which is what Trump is kind of bandying about, not really 3 months, I threw that out arbitrarily, but like in a few months, then those ISIS troops that are still in hiding that we're still trying to eradicate will just go deeper underground and reemerge the minute the Americas leave. But and the other thing happens that if the United States pulls out of Syria right now, we leave this huge vacuum in which Turkey, Russia, Iran can kind of swoop in and take the place, and then we kind of cede our control, and not really control, but like we cede our presence and we cede our ability to help out in that area, and we kind of give it over to people who have been less concerned with human rights and using chemical weapons on people, and with respect specifically to Russia and Turkey, and we leave a larger space for those people to dominate in those spaces. In fact, Erdogan, who's the president of Turkey, President Erdogan, Recep Erdogan, Putin, obviously president of Russia, and Prime Minister Rouhani from Iran all met together on the subject of Syria this week too, which is like a trifecta that you kind of don't really want to get together.
Yeah, that doesn't really sound like the greatest.
No, and also it's funny that they even
pals.
mesh because Turkey's technically a secular state, but it does like lean towards more of a Sunni Islam, and Iran is definitely a Shia Islam, so it's interesting that even they're cooperating. But to have all three of those cooperating and consulting on the topic of Russia is a little bit concerning, and then to have Trump talking about pulling out of Syria at the same time.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
None of that is a recipe for good things. So, yeah. That's exciting in a not very good way. Then the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was speaking this week, and he put forward my favorite conspiracy theory about the poisoning of former Russian spy Skripal and his daughter Yulia. I can't remember Skripal's first name.
Sergei.
Is he also Sergei? Sergei Skripal.
It's a very common Russian name.
Yeah, for real though. So if you remember, it's about a little over a month ago now, they were poisoned by a nerve gas and they were in a coma. Skripal's daughter woke up last week. I haven't seen anything about his condition. She came out of the coma last week and is kind of in the recovery process, but Britain determined that this poisoning, this nerve agent use was conducted by Russia, because Russia's like one of the only, the government is the only place where this nerve agent really exists. And that's led to this whole trading of different diplomats on either side in multiple countries, and this like navigated very on purpose attack on Russia's diplomats and whatever else. But Lavrov this week decided to he put forward the idea that the British government perpetrated this nerve agent attack on Skripal and his daughter in order to draw attention away from the chaos that is the Brexit process right now, which I just think is really funny. I mean, like, it's kind of sort of like almost believable in some ways, but at the same time, like, the British government is one who like advocates most strongly for chemical weapons control, and so it's just like this weird like conspiracy theory moment.
The Russians, I also saw something, are like thinking that, like, the Skripals really aren't in that critical of condition. And they're like, yeah, supposedly there was something about, like, they didn't have their phones or, like, something for a couple hours. Anyways, they're, like, pushing the conspiracy theory that they're, like, not actually, like, in critical condition. And everyone's like, what?
I don't think that's right. There is one plausible explanation, though, is that is a little bit different, is that Russia didn't perpetrate this at all because it's, like, so obvious. Like, all roads point to Moscow, right? Like, it looks so obvious that Russia did this that it could possibly be that, like, Ukraine or some other, like, satellite state that kind of wants something pinned on Russia could have perpetrated this in a way that it pointed directly back at Russia. But right now, it looks like Russia did it.
The Russian government is saying that it was the intelligence service of another country, is what they're saying. They didn't say which country, but they just said it was the intelligence service of another country. And they're all like, okay.
All right. You believe that. We'll believe what we believe. Yeah.
So, of course, yeah, they're trying to deflect the blame from themselves. But as far as the Western world is concerned, it seems like they're all pretty much united in the conclusion that it was either the Russian government or they lost track of this agent, and so indirectly it was from them.
Yeah. I don't know. Other Russia things.
Oh my, yeah, speaking of Russia things,
again,
Putin and his government tested a new ICBM.
ICBM is an intercontinental ballistic missile, which means, like, the
Super
most powerful
long range.
ones, super long range. The most powerful ones can reach anywhere in the world.
And this one, supposedly Putin is claiming that it renders defense systems, quote, useless. That's not what you want to hear from Putin. I don't know about you, but that is not the words I want to be hearing from Putin's mouth. Also, there were some reports that, like, Trump was threatening an arms race with Putin.
Yeah,
Did
he
you
was
see
doing
that?
that.
Like,
yeah.
we can do an arms race, but you'll lose.
You'll lose.
We do not want to be starting up another Cold War arms race right now. So that was a little scary.
Especially when our GDP is, like, 10 times the Russian GDP.
Yeah, and no, but I mean, Putin's trying to, he's making new weapons, so that's not scary at all.
No, it's not.
Okay. Off of Russia for a minute.
Okay.
But to the Russia probe.
Oh, so wait. Does anything ever stop revolving around Russia? It's like they want to be the center of attention always.
So we have, this week, there was the first sentencing of someone from the Mueller probe.
Okay, yep, I saw this.
So it was a Dutch lawyer by the name of Alex van der Svan.
Yep. And he was accused of lying to the FBI about connections that he had to people on the Trump team and with Russia.
Yes, I believe that's
Thanks.
correct.
I've read it like 5 times because my brain was so tired that I was like,
it's...
I don't actually know what I'm reading.
He was sentenced to 30 days in jail and like a $20,000 fine. So like nothing super bad, but this is significant because it's the first sentencing of someone from the Mueller probe. There's been indictments, but this is the first sentencing.
Right. We've had indictments, we've had guilty pleas.
But this is the first sentencing. So, also, apparently...
And also, he was someone I'd never heard of.
Yeah, he was...
Like, they keep coming out of nowhere. I just, like, there's a new name every day. And I just...
And supposedly, I also heard reporting this week that Mueller told Trump's lawyers that he is a subject of investigation. He's not a target, but he's a subject.
Which I'm like, why do we need to make this distinction?
So, I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
But it's interesting.
Yeah. So, in another international, like, what the heck is the Trump administration doing moment, China and the United States are currently locked into a trade war because the United States levied sanctions against China, which is, like, actually kind of dumb. And then China levied sanctions against us, and then we levied sanctions back, and now China's going to do it again. And China's doing it really strategically. Like, I don't really care to talk about the fact that I think it's really stupid that we're levying a trade war and that, like, there are a million other ways to get our way, especially when we buy a lot of goods from China and they import a lot of goods from us. But the thing that they're doing that I think is worrisome is they're levying sanctions on, of all things, they're being very strategic in targeting these sanctions against Trump populations. So, like, Trump country. So they're targeting specifically, I can't remember if they've done this one yet, but one that they could do in the near future is soybeans. And China imports a lot of our soybeans.
And that's areas of the country that very much support Trump, like Wisconsin and like the Midwest.
Yeah. So they're being really smart about it. It's kind of incredible, like how, and it's not just them. Like when we first talked about levying sanctions, like a lot of countries were like, well, we'll target back. Like they were talking about McConnell and his districts. Was it like whiskey or something like that from McConnell's, and something else from, I think, corn from Ryan's or something like that. Don't quote me on either of those. I can't remember exactly what it was, but like these countries are being really smart about how they're targeting their sanctions, and so it'll be really interesting. I just think it's stupid for China and the U.S. to get into a trade war, first of all, but the way that China's handling themselves in it, it's really smart. So, last thing is the latest member of the Trump administration to be on thin ice, and this is EP Administrator Scott Pruitt. AKA the dude that, like, sued the EPA before he joined it.
Yeah, so, to be clear, he wasn't... I don't know why you choose someone to run an agency that doesn't believe in the agency itself.
Right, and also doesn't know that nuclear... Yeah.
So... kind of remind you, that's Rick Perry.
That's Rick Perry.
Didn't even know.
Who doesn't know that nuclear weapons are housed in the Department of Energy.
Couldn't even name Energy Department at one point.
Right.
Anyways,
right.
But
different guy.
Scott Pruitt is similar in that he like sued the EPA several times and like really fought against what its purpose and mission is, and now he's the head of it.
He sued it as an attorney general too, like of a state attorney general. Yeah.
So he's had some travel. Remember back in the summer, there are a lot of like things coming about cabinet travel. He apparently flies first class because it's for safety reasons.
Oh, God.
And it's come out he has a 24-hour security detail.
Why?
And he's paranoid. He is one paranoid dude.
Like, the only person who has a 24-hour security detail in the entire U.S. government is is presidents and former presidents.
Well, and the vice president. Doesn't the Secretary of State have DS?
I don't know, actually. There are very few people. The point is that there are very few people who have security clearance at like security teams at all times, and like the former presidents have like 2 bodyguards on them at most. Yeah.
So this dude is paranoid. Okay. Apparently, it came out recently too that he wanted to like use sirens and lights to drive through DC traffic to get to places faster, and the people were like, "No, that's only for emergency." So he tried to do that. Then it came out about his housing situation. Apparently, when he first moved to Washington, he was staying at a condo owned by the wife of a lobbyist who, surprise, is in the energy industry, who, surprise, the EPA regulates.
Which resulted in a ruling in her husband's favor.
Yes.
I mean, maybe not resulted in, but, like, her husband got a favorable ruling from Scott Pruitt.
So this housing situation is, he supposedly stayed in one room, and he only paid for it the nights he slept there, which was $50 a night. And if you don't know DC real estate, that's like nothing.
That's
like,
absolutely nothing.
DC is one of the most expensive places to live in the country, and to rent somewhere is outrageous. So the fact that he's paying $50 a night that he only stayed there was questionable.
Yep.
Then it came out that 2 of his top political appointees got raises at the APA against the White House's wishes. Mm-hmm. And Scott Pruitt went on and then White House Chief of Staff John Kelly called him and said, "Yo, dude, these scandals need to stop." And the White House...
I'm sure he said it exactly like that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
John Kelly.
He said it just like that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But then the White House, according to reporting, told Pruitt not to go on a media tour. But what did Scott Pruitt do? He's been going on a media tour. So he was on Fox News, and kudos to this Fox News reporter, and I cannot remember my name for the life of me, but I am very proud of this Fox News reporter for not going soft on him. So he was asking him about this promotion thing, and Scott Pruitt's like, "I didn't know it happened, and I corrected it." And the guy's like, wait, you didn't know this happened?
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, I didn't know about it, and I corrected it. And the guy's like, how did you not know about this? You're the head of the agency. And he's like, I didn't, my staff did it, and now I've corrected it. And everyone was like, what? Like,
that's not...
You cannot be the head of the agency and not know what's going on with something as large as a pay raise.
Yeah.
And apparently, you need to go watch this interview from Fox News. It's great. Because Scott Pruitt is very dodgy, and he's literally, like, ringing in his seat. Like, he's squirming. You can tell he's very uncomfortable. And he's, like, totally dodging questions. Like, did you know about it? My staff did this, and I corrected it. And I love the Fox News host who just keeps pressing him, like, you're the head of the agency. How do you not know about this?
Yeah, wow.
So, Trump was asked today as he went to an event in West Virginia if he had confidence in Scott Pruitt, and he said yes. But Trump...
He always says that.
He says that about a lot of people right before they're fired, so that's not really any indication.
No.
I mean, like, just 5-6 days before H.R. McMaster was fired, Sarah Sanders was like, oh, everything's great, his job's fine. Yeah. And then he got fired 6 days later.
I feel like that happened with Tillerson.
Same thing happened with Tillerson.
You know what? He just says that right before everyone's fired.
So... It's like, start the clock on Scott Pruitt.
Yeah.
And my thing is like, dude, if you want to fly first class everywhere, if you want to stay in fancy places, if you want to, like, have fancy escorts, like, go to the private sector.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to be rich and, like, super big wig, like, go to the private sector. Like, you can't expect to have, like, this rock star treatment as a member of the public government. Like, that's only, like, for the president.
Yep.
We don't have, like, Secret Service and, like, lavish accommodations for every single member of the government. So,
because if we did, we would be in far more debt than we are.
We would be out of money. So, bottom line is if you want to fly first class and have swanky deals and swanky accommodations,
don't work for the government.
Go to the private sector. Because the government don't have money to throw out like that.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Also, I heard that he had installed a bulletproof desk, which everyone was like, what? Like a bulletproof desk? And he, like, installed, like, a $50,000 soundproof booth.
Yeah, this just all sounds
so, like,
real sketchy.
all this stuff is coming out, and everyone's like, what? Like, why do you need any of this? Bottom line is, he's really swampy right now. Yeah. So, we'll see what happens if he can survive being a swamp monster or not.
That's so weird.
All right. I've been talking for a while now. Brigitte, you're going to do our soapbox.
I am going to do our soapbox. So my soapbox this week stems from a class discussion. It was an online discussion that, so I'm in a Chinese government and politics class right now. Ooh, where, yeah, it's really fascinating. It's really good. And we do discussions each week. We kind of look up news articles that are going on, things that are going on in the news, and then we talk about them in this class discussion. And online class discussions are the bane of my existence because usually they're like, post an article and then comment.
Then you have to reply to
two of your classmates. So I usually do mine pretty early in the week because I will forget about it later in the week, and then nobody's posted, so I have to go back and read them later. So Saturday, in between conference sessions, I was sitting down to do this assignment, and the meeting between Xi and Kim had happened that week in Beijing, right? So the president of North Korea and the president of China had met that week, so there were going to be a lot of posts about that. And I was just scrolling through, and I was like, expecting people to be, like, intelligent in their responses. So first I come across this guy who is pretty much a know-it-all whenever it comes to, like, Chinese history. Like, he sometimes knows more than my professor. And he's really smart about it and, like, is very thoughtful about things. And so I was very surprised when I was reading his post, which was about how... He was talking about how, like, the idea that North Korea wanted to have disarmament now, he was thinking that it was because they were trying to save face because he believed that they have the nuclear know-how to create nuclear weapons, but that they don't have the materials in order to be able to create nuclear weapons and ICBMs. And I was, like, kind of stared at this a couple of times, like, read it 3 or 4 times, trying to, like, understand his argument, because... Last fall, I was reading an article, like last August, when the last nuclear test had taken place from North Korea, and we were hearing all about their ICBM. I'd been reading an article from one of the experts on this. And so I went and found this article again and was rereading it. North Korea has 60 nuclear weapons and a functional ICBM that can reach most parts of the United States. Okay, so I'm like thinking through this guy's post and trying to figure out where he would come up with this information, and I was just finally like, there's no way, like, this is kind of unacceptable that you can be so out of touch with one of the most major issues in the world right now, enough to think that, like, North Korea has not gone nuclear. Like, if you want to be a part of the foreign policy community, or want to be read up, especially if you're a part of the Chinese nuclear, like, if you want to be a part of that sphere, in my mind, if you're studying a country, you should understand its relationships and with its neighbors, and also like what these neighbors are doing. So North Korea is one of the biggest global stories right now. So to not know that they have nuclear weapons or have an ICBM, like kind of shocked me. So then I was like, okay, but maybe this is isolated. I've kind of fixed the story here, like kind of said, look, no, North Korea is nuclear. They have nuclear weapons. They do have the fundamental capabilities and materials to be able to make ICBMs and to make nuclear weapons. Like, okay, I've set the record straight, backed it up with facts that aren't just me. And then I moved on to the next one because I had to do another response.
Of course, as you do.
As you do. So I'm reading the next one, and she's like, this person is reading this story about how, is using this article that said, like, South Korea wasn't in the conversation to organize this meeting between Beijing and Pyongyang. And in my mind, I thought, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like, Pyongyang and South Korea
aren't super best pals.
They're not. They are not best pals at all. Like, the fact that North Korea has been reaching out to South Korea to set up the summit with the United States and, like, making overtures, like, that's new. Like, we talked about it in January when they set up the phone line again. Like, they hadn't talked in 2 years. They're not friends. But China has long been North Korea's best and most consistent ally, and they still do trade deals, right? So, like, in my mind, this is like common sense. North Korea and China are friends. South Korea and North Korea are not friends. Anyway, so like these people, and there are like 6 people that have commented on this that are like, oh yeah, that's weird. Like, I thought that North Korea would have been involved like this. And then also North Korea invited China to be a part of the summit between North Korea, South Korea, and the United States, which, like, makes sense. You'd bring your ally with you, right? Like, that makes sense. So I'm reading all these comments and like, that's really weird that they wouldn't consult South Korea on this, that they wouldn't talk to them, that they wouldn't involve them in the planning. And I'm kind of going, guys, like, are you not paying attention to the news? Like, so my soapbox this week is that if you choose to be involved in international politics at all, no matter what you study, I think that you should probably read up on the biggest stories of the day. I can suggest newsletters for you that will help you to kind of keep involved, not only on domestic issues, because that's super important to understand the biggest stories of the day, but also international issues, especially when it comes to North Korea, which is in the news almost every week these days. And you need to understand that, because that is one of the biggest existential threats to the United States, because they do have an ICBM that they can launch at the United States. We're not sure that they have the technology able to put a nuclear warhead on that ICBM, but they have one, and that's dangerous. And they do have nuclear weapons, and there is the possibility that they might use them, and that's important for people to understand. And so I think that, but if you are studying international relations and you are focusing, even if you're focusing on a specific area of the world, like I tend to focus on the Middle East and the things going on there. But even as I focus on the Middle East, I still know that Venezuela had a prison fire last week that killed 60 inmates. I still know that North Korea met with the leader of China, right? I still know things that are going on in Russia and in Syria and in Yemen. I mean, I still know, and in Africa, I still know the results of the Egyptian election, even though that's technically not a part of the Middle East. I still know these things. And I think it's important, especially when you're studying a country like China, that you keep track of its friends, its neighbors, and its allies, and its enemies, its direct enemies, and the people it's talking about. And obviously, there is no way that one person can incorporate all the news of all the world. You have to kind of let some things go, but it is important that you know the biggest stories of the day, and that includes the stories of North Korea, because it is such a big story that is impacting so many people. And so to me, it's neglectful of a student of international relations or a student of political science in general to not put in the work. And it's not, I mean, it is work. It's a little bit of work. It's like 5 to 10 minutes every day to read these newsletters, to keep up on the biggest stories of the day, and to kind of be aware of these stories, because it's frustrating to me as someone who cares so much that like the people who want to solve the problems that we're facing with North Korea and China right now, the people who are studying that don't fully understand the nuances and aren't putting in the time to understand them, because that's where we make mistakes and that's where we've gone wrong in the past. Sorry.
Woo!
Take a deep breath now. I'm done.
That was a good soapbox.
That's my soapbox this week. I'm still not over it. That happened last Saturday, and I'm like still peeved about it, because I think it's so neglectful and so detrimental. And like even if you want to be marginally involved with decision making in the United States or any other government someday, like you need to pay attention. Anyway.
Stay informed, folks.
Please.
That's the bottom line.
Please.
Alrighty, well that does it.
Yeah.
A little bit of a shorter one this week.
We'll see you later, though.